Hello, hello, hello. How's everyone doing today? Hey, thank you so much for coming to home church. I'm so glad you're here, whether it's in person or online. We are getting into week 2 of Guard Your Heart. Last week, Eddie kind of introduced this thing about guard your heart, and he talked about how, man, we modify our heart to kind of fit to our environments that we're around. We have all these filters in place to make sure that we fit, but we don't actually, a lot of times we don't deal with the root things that are heart. We're just like, if we apply our filters, man, when we're going to be good in places, right? And he said our heart's like a sponge and it's soaking up all these things. But here's what happens in life. Some pressures start to happen. And even though we have these filters in place, these pressures happen, like relational pressure, marriage pressure, stress, financial pressure. There's too many S's in this message. Lack of sleep, hunger, unresolved issues, fear. But here's what happens. If you actually don't deal with the things that are at the root of your heart, right? No, it doesn't matter how many filters you have in place to adapt to your environments. If there's enough, then not even these filters will stop all the leakage of these things coming out of your heart. So that's why it's really, really important to guard your heart. In Proverbs 4:23, this is what it tells us. And so, actually, I got like 3 different translations here just because I like them all. And so for the King James Version, it says, "Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life." In the NIV version, it says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." And in the NLT version, it says, "Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life." So I think we can all agree that it's a really, really important thing that we guard our heart, especially if everything we do in life comes from it. So this week, we're going to talk about kind of what we guard our heart from, because, man, how many of you have gone through the same experience with other people, only for at the end, what they received was different than what you received, or like their perspective of it was different than your perspective of it? Like you went through a really awesome experience, like, man, that was awesome, and the other person's like, it was okay, all right? So that's why this week we're going to talk about guarding your heart from deceit. So in Jeremiah 17:9, it says, "The human heart is the most deceitful of all things and desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is?" And you're like, my heart? Are you talking about my heart? It can't be. My whole life I've been told to follow my heart. In every rom-com I've ever watched, it says, "Let my heart guide me," right? Surely it's not talking about my heart, but it is. But I think it's important to give it some context. So we're going to read the scriptures that are actually above it. So in verses 5 through 8, this is what it says. "Cursed are those who put their trust in mere humans, who rely on human strength and turn their hearts away from the Lord. They are like stunted shrubs in the desert, with no hope for the future. They will live in the barren wilderness, in an uninhabited salty land, but blessed are those who trust in the Lord and have made the Lord their hope and confidence. They are like trees planted along a riverbank, with roots that reach deep into the water. Such trees are not bothered by the heat or worried by long months of drought. Their leaves stay green, and they never stop producing fruit." So when we read verse 9 and it says, "The human heart is the most deceitful of all things and desperately wicked, who really knows how bad it is?" God's like, I know how bad it is. He goes, I know that if you will trust me with your heart, right, you'll be good. But man, I know how your heart can be shaped and how it can be conformed, right? And here's what I want you to do. I don't want you to read that verse like with one of those big beware or else signs, right? It's easy to read verses like that and be like, man, it's going to be bad if I don't guard my heart. Here's what I want you to read it. I want you to read it through the context that it's coming from a good and loving Father. Because here's what he's saying. He says, hey, you have to guard your heart because, man, there's some pain that you might experience in life that I don't want for you, right? I don't want you to live a barren life. I want good things for you. And so, hey, let me watch your heart. Like, give your heart to me. Essentially, hey, don't trust your heart. Trust your heart with God. You see, God knows that on a daily basis you are going to see things, hear things, do things, and experience things that can influence, shape, and change you if you don't protect yourselves from them. So early on in parenthood, me and Sheena received some of the best advice we've ever received about parenting. From too many S's, I'm telling you. Gosh, the S's are getting me today. Any of y'all have these days? Just me? My tongue is bigger than my mouth, so it makes it hard. So as a parent, this is the advice we received. Hey, surround your kids with people that you trust, that will speak truth and life and love into them. Be very strategic when you do it. Right? Because there's going to be a time when your kids get to a certain age, and for all my parents who have already met that age, right, like you know, sometimes you're not the voice they're looking for. Right? You can say something to them, like something just that is just complete revelation and should change their world, right? And you say it, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's pretty cool. And then like a week later, they show up, and they're like, you won't believe what so-and-so told me. And it's the same thing you told them, but for some reason they listened this time, right? It's true. And, right, I see a lot of heads shaking up and down, right? So be strategic, because it's not if people are going to speak into your kids' lives, it's when. So you want to put people in place. And why? Why do you do this? Because you know that those words that are spoken into them and the people that influence them matter. The things that go into their heart matter, and it will help shape them for when they walk out life, especially when they're grown and they get to make all their own decisions. You know that all the things that you're pouring into them now matters, right? So we're going to have a little story time with me. And before we do, there's going to be a couple pictures that come up on the screen. And these are of a younger me. Don't laugh. Mark. All right. So this is me. Also, after this, I don't want to hear like that kid was skinny, right? I get it. Right. So anyway, so go back to the first picture. All right. So this is young Chris Harper, who just joined the military. And so this is at basic training. I know. Look at those ears. Okay. And so soon after this, man, I went to war. I did my first deployment to Iraq. And in Iraq, man, I did things that you think of when people go to war. And, man, things happen there. And, you know, I saw some things and I experienced some things. And I did some things that, man, I didn't really know how to comprehend. And then here's what happened. I came home still not knowing how to comprehend them. And so I did what there are some wise young kids. I did what I did, and I hung out with the wrong crowd. And I turned to vices that were not good for me. Just trying to numb myself from the things that I'd saw and the things that I'd experienced. And man, I wasn't in a good place in this time. Man, in this time, I was going through this shame and guilt spiral. Because, man, I didn't know how to comprehend or cope with what had happened. man, and I started to believe all the negative self-talk, right? I definitely didn't have the people around me that were speaking truth and life and love into me. And then this time I started making decisions that were way outside of my character. Started acting a way that I'd never acted before. So let's go to the next picture. Right? Again, look at those ears. Right? So this is me, and you'll see, and I just took a picture of this out of my yearbook. It says, most caring. So me and Whitney there, we got voted most caring. So in high school, and in the yearbooks, you always have like best smile, most likely to become a movie star, and all that. Well, I didn't have that great of a smile, and I didn't have the movie star pizzazz going on. But here's what, this kid right here was, man, sensitive-hearted, looking at the best in everyone. Man, if I thought I hurt your feelings, then, man, it just tore me up. Man, and during the stage of my life when I was after Iraq, man, I missed this kid. I missed him a lot. But I was actually still this person. I just had some heart issues. But what happened was I started to believe I was the bad guy, that I was the monster, because of all the things that I had gone through. And I started to live my life like that. Man, I had been deceived, and my heart was the culprit. I had gone through some experiences. Because here's what happens. We go through life, and we go through experiences, and trauma creates scars. You can take that down. That's really distracting. Broken relationships create bitterness. Failures create insecurities. Bad decisions and mistakes create shame and guilt. And so here's what happened. And so I want you to realize that picture was taken within 2 years. Right? How does a kid who gets voted most caring turn into the kid who believes he's a monster? Deceit. It takes a lot of deceit because my heart wasn't guarded. So it's through these times when our heart is vulnerable and unprotected that this false narrative starts to play in our minds. It's in these times that, man, victims of abuse start to believe that they're not worth a whole lot instead of the masterpieces that they are. It's in these times that broken relationships start to make people build these huge walls so that they don't ever get hurt again when they're actually built for connection. It's in these times that failure crushes people's dreams, and so they stop so short of what God has for them in life. It's in these times that young men who might have been voted most caring think that they're monsters and start to push everyone away. Because I think that we can all agree, and we've heard this numerous times, that one of the main tools that the enemy uses is confusion, right? And we know, because it said in 1 Corinthians 14:33, for God is not a God of disorder, but a God of peace. He's not a God of confusion, right? But this is what he does. And I just want to interject here, right? We're talking about how to guard your heart and all these things, but one thing I do want to interject right here is what guarding your heart is not. That's right. It's important, all right? What guarding your heart is not is this, that you build walls up so high that you don't let anyone in. It's not. Because we know that something's supposed to flow out of here, right? But if there's a big wall there, you're just going to drown yourself. Okay? So that's not what it is. But what's crazy is our whole life we are told, hey, follow your heart. Let your heart guide you. Trust your heart. Some of you, if you go to your Spotify playlist right now, at least 3 songs have that message in it. Right? But the truth is, make sure your heart is following God. Let God guide your heart. Trust your heart in God. So the more that I prepared this message, and we're going to hit like a really weird analogy, like a little illustration here soon, and I really need you to stick with me, okay? But the more I prepared this message and the more I read the verses that talk about guarding your heart, the more that I realized that it sounds a whole lot like your kid, okay? So we guard them. We guard our kids. We keep them. Man, they're so easily deceived, right? There's a reason we tell our kids don't talk to strangers, right? It's a universal truth. All of our kids know it. And I used to play hide or like tag with my nieces and nephews, and they'd get really close to like tagging me, and I'd say, "Stop, I'm over there." And they would turn around and look, and I would run off, right? They're easily deceived, right? And so is your heart. I need you to stick this. So as we keep going with this illustration, at some point, when I say kid or heart, they're going to be synonymous through this. Man, they need direction. Get into your vehicle and let your 2-year-old try to guide you home. I don't care if you live 20 seconds away from here or 3 miles, you ain't getting there, right? They needed to be guided, and so does your heart. And also, man, your kids just don't make sense sometimes, right? And you're like, hey, okay. Hey, but trust me, okay? You shouldn't stick that thing in that thing. It's bad. You'll get electrocuted, right? Hey, trust me. I'm here to protect you and guide you and love you, right? And so when we read these scriptures about our heart, man, that's how God is with our heart, man. He's like a father to us, and he wants us to submit it to him. So we're going to picture that, right? Our heart / kid here, right? They're synonymous for the time being. Is having a birthday party, right? And man, you want this birthday party to be good. So if you've ever held a birthday party for your kid, you know exactly who you're inviting, right? You also know who you're not inviting, right? For good reason, because you want it to be a good party, right? So we're going to picture the party's going good, man. We got grandparents and cousins and aunts and uncles and friends there, and it's good. And then, like, we're going to say, for instance, someone gifted you a bouncer for the party, right? There's someone at your door, right? And they're guarding the party for you, right? And Uncle Homer shows up at your door. So, in all honesty, I was going to try to create or pull up some pictures that you could reference, like, of these characters up here. But I was afraid that one of you would be like, "Hey, that's my Uncle Homer," right? So I'm not going to do pictures. I just need you to follow me here. Okay, so Uncle Homer shows up, and he's got his bottle of water, but you know it's not water, right? And he's walking funny, and you're pretty sure the last time he was there, he siphoned gas out of your truck, right? So you don't let Uncle Homer in. Why? Because you know the party's going to go bad if you let him in, okay? We got to guard the party here, right? But then your cousin Bart shows up. You catching on? Some of you catching on. All right? Your cousin Bart shows up. And Bart's a little weird. He's a mime, okay? And he doesn't know how to turn that stuff off, right? But he's innocent enough, right? So you let him in the party. And then not long after that, Aunt Marge shows up. Whew. Man, Aunt Marge, all she does is badmouth other people. You wish she was a mime, okay? But her and your mom don't get along. They always break out into this really, really big fight. So you don't let her in the party. Why? Because you want peace at the party, right? It's really, really important. So we're going to call this first part of the illustration, this part of the story, we're going to call this the guarding your heart part of the story. The bouncer's doing an excellent job. This is the Proverbs 4:23 part of the story, okay? So next, right, the party's going well, it's all getting good, but man, Bart's really scaring the kids, okay? He's trying to communicate with them. He crawled through an imaginary window. They're pretty freaked out. A couple of them were starting to cry. Man, he's not very good for the party, okay? So, and then the kid Ned down the road, right? you realize he's smuggling presents in his backpack. Now, I do want to point out that Ned's been there the whole time. Okay? So they got to go. Side note here, mimes kind of look like clowns. And so my youngest, Naomi, we went to a party that had a clown in it recently, and man, she would not look up. Right? So I can only imagine she's not going to like mimes either. So, but anyways, we're going to call this part of the illustration the cleansing your heart part of the story, right? This is the Matthew 23, 25, and 26 part of the story, right? We got to kick some people out of the party for the party to continue to be right, okay? So in Matthew 23, 25, and 26, it says, "What sorrow awaits you, you teachers of religious law, and you Pharisees, hypocrites? For you are so careful to clean the outside of the cup and the dish, but inside you are filthy, full of greed and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first wash the inside of the cup and dish, and the outside will become clean too." Right? So get it. You guarded. All right, we're going to go back to real talk now. It's not a party anymore. Right? You guarded your heart. You make sure that the things that are getting in there are good. Right? And so I get the illustration was goofy, but here's what I want you to take away. Guarding your heart is so important, especially if everything you do flows from it. What does that look like? It means you control the things that you can control to go in there. Also, I do want to point out that just as important as it is to keep the things that you don't need in there out, it is just as important of what you do put in there. Okay? And number 2 is, hey, some of you have some things in your heart that don't need to be in there. Right? They've been there for a while. They've been hiding. And so you need to cleanse those things out. Hey, man, I get that's a real churchy term too. Cleanse your heart. Right? I need that broken down Barney style for me, right? Because that just doesn't work. So we're going to talk about what that looks like. So there are some things in your life that have hurt you, right? And man, it's built these scars inside of you. But man, you found a way to function through it and struggle, and you got all these filters in place, right? But there are some things in you that don't need to be there anymore. There are some people that have told you things that you can't, you aren't, you never will, you're not good enough, right? Hey, these things don't belong there either. They're just going to pollute the things that come out of you later on. There are some things that you have done in life, some horrible choices or mistakes, right, that have created like this shame and guilt spiral into you. And instead of letting those things be a lesson, you let them become an identity to you. Hey, these things need to leave too. So when it talks about cleansing your heart, it's the deceit in your heart. It's not the things that God says you are. So I know this makes sense. There are things in my heart, and they flow out of me, right? So I need to make sure I guard my heart and make sure that only the good things are getting in. And if there's anything bad, it needs to come out. But how do I do it? How do I guard my heart? How do I keep my heart from deceiving me? Well, the mortal enemy of deceit is truth, right? So, I'm not talking about your truth or my truth based off my world experiences. And just so we're clear, your truth based off world experiences is the thing that has caused you problems before, right? Because I need you to know that when you say things like your truth and my truth, right? Hey, there is the truth, okay? And so if you make your choices off your truth because you have made some bad decisions, right? And here's the thing is, we make these things and we're like, trust our heart. And I get that sometimes what we're saying is, hey, trust your gut here, right? But there are other times, and I've heard so many times, well, that's just the way I feel, so I can't control it. Right? Hey, that's actually not right. That's not right. A lot of us are like, man, I'm going to trust my heart. But man, I can't even trust myself around food the first day of a fast or when I go on a diet. Man, you put some food in front of me, like I wasn't even hungry, and then I'm like, I'm on a diet, and I get hungry instantly. Right? And I'm supposed to trust my heart. I can't even trust my appetite. Okay? So how is it, man? You speak truth. You let God's words be your guide and not your emotions. So who here has your emotions gotten you in trouble before? Right? Everyone. Don't worry, I'm not saying that your emotions are bad. They're not. They're just not supposed to be your guide. That's why I love this lyric from a Casting Crowns song called "Oh My Soul." And it says, there's a place where fear has to face the God you know. I love that. You need to know that's exactly what he's talking about in your heart. Hey, and your heart's going to deal with some things sometimes, some really hard things. And you're meant to introduce them to God. Another way to put it is, to the extent that I trust my heart to God, I can trust my heart. It's maturity, right? What happens when your kids don't listen? They break out and they do things that compromise their standards and their morals, and their life kind of goes on a fork pattern. We call that rebellion, right? What happens when our kids listen to wisdom and they do what they're supposed to do and what they're taught? They keep high standards of high morals. Here's what we do. We give them responsibilities and freedom. So here's what I'm going to need you to know, that, hey, the more that you trust your heart with God, the more you can trust your heart. So if the condition is a deceitful heart, then the antidote must be truth. How many people have heard the power of life and death is in the tongue? You've heard it multiple times, right? And it's true that it is. So many of us have had things spoken into us at the right moments, and we realize whether it's good or bad, right? They've stuck with us over life. Whether you were at your lowest moment and someone came and they lifted you up with some kind words, it meant more than they ever knew, didn't it? And it's true. When our kids struggle with things, or when our kids make mistakes, or when our kids make just flat out bad choices, right? And we look at them and we say, hey, it's okay. We're going to learn from this. Hey, it's okay. We're going to be better. Right? Hey, that's not who you are. Right? We do these things not because we're blowing rainbows into the world. We're doing it because we're speaking truth to them. We all know that it's a little harder when it's us, right? We have our own heart issues. So here's what you do. You focus on what God says about you. You meditate on it. You apply it to your life. See, because when I base my identity and truth on what God says is true of me, it doesn't fluctuate. What God says is true of me is constant. And here's what he says. He says, I'm accepted and worthy, Psalm 139. I'm never alone, Romans 8, 38 and 39. I'm blameless, Colossians 1:22. I have eternal security, 1 John 5, 11 through 13. And these things will never change because they're not based on who you are, what you've done, and what you haven't done. These are just truths. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away, behold, the new has come. 2 Corinthians 5:17. As followers of Christ, we don't have to view ourselves the way the world demands that we do. We have a new lens to see through. One of my favorite verses relating to who we are in Christ is 1 Peter 2:9. But you are a chosen race, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, a people for his own possession, that you may proclaim the excellencies of him who called you out of darkness into his marvelous light. I have been chosen into a royal and holy family, and I belong to God. And because of that, I proclaim that what he has done in my life. I glorify him in all that I do. The word also tells me I'm forgiven, 1 Peter 2:24. I'm not condemned, Romans 8:1. I'm fearfully and wonderfully made, Psalms 139:14. I guarantee you all the scriptures, and there's so many more, that I just read off don't line up with what your heart tells you sometimes. The problem is, though, instead of dealing with the root of them because it's painful, we cover them up. We hope that we can pile enough good things on top of it that it'll never rear its ugly head again. And almost every single one of us can say that that's not the way that works out ever. A lot of you have gone through some really, really hard things. And for a long time, you struggled in life because you let those hard things become part of your identity. You let your heart fool you. So here's the hard truth is you aren't who you say you are. You are who God says you are. And so when you live outside of that, it's a lie. It is deceit. So as we wrap up today, here's what I want you to do. I want you to do a self-check, and I want you to ask, hey, how's my heart? Man, am I hanging on to something that I don't need to hang on to? Hey, for any of you struggling with unforgiveness right now, here's what I need you to know is, hey, it doesn't do anything to the other person, right? It doesn't protect you from future hurt. Hey, for those of you carrying shame and guilt, know that when you hang on to that, it doesn't protect you from future bad decisions. Right? That thing was meant to be a lesson, not an identity. Hey, for the negative words you've heard in the past and you've held on to them, hey, for hurt that you've caused other people. Hey, that's really, really hard to get past. But it's not something you're supposed to carry. And I get that some of these are easier said than done. But if such great things are supposed to flow from your heart, if you are to be the person that God has called you to be, you got to know that you can't be it while carrying 50 pounds of crap that aren't supposed to be there. You'll get tired real fast. And the mask that you wear, man, it gets real uncomfortable. And soon people just see through it anyways. The hard part is some of you don't even know you're deceiving yourself. And the even uglier part is some of you know that you lie to yourselves on a daily basis. Just getting through your day. As I brought some of these things up, some of you realize, hey man, I've been carrying some things I need to let go of. So if you would, just bow your heads right now. So I'd ask, and just real fast, some of you would say, hey, I got a heart issue. Hey, I got some things that are really, really hard for me to let go, or hey, man, I haven't had defenses up, and I'm letting some things in my life right now that I know I shouldn't let in. Hey, if you need prayer for that, please just raise your hand real fast. I see him. I see him. Here's what you need to know. Is the more that you give your heart to God, the more you'll trust God. The more that you let Him speak into your life, the better your life is going to be. It doesn't guarantee that no hard times come. It just guarantees that you have God there when they come. And that is all you need. Heavenly Father, I pray over each and every individual here today, God. I pray that they would tear down the walls of their heart, God, and just open it up to you. God, that whatever issues that they brought in here, God, that they would start to lay them down at your feet. God, I pray for people to enter their life that can speak truth and life and love into them. God, that they would seek your word and apply it to their lives, God. And that for all the fears and anxieties and lies and trauma and scars, God, that they would introduce them to you so that they can walk out a life that would fully glorify you. I pray that as they leave here today, God, that you bless them and that you keep them. I pray all this in your matchless name, Jesus. Amen. Hey, thank you so much for coming today. Hey, tonight, again, is team night. So if you can make that, hey, let's come together as a family and talk about where we're going. Hey, God bless, and y'all have a wonderful day.